Hi, everyone. Welcome to Todd Talks. And today we are talking about notable figures in the tabletop industry who are streamers who create content for D&D and other games. And yeah, so we wanted to focus on Black creators in the tabletop scene. And I'd like everyone to have a chance to introduce themselves, even though I have a feeling you already know everyone here. Let's start off with CB.
Oh, hey. Hi. My name is Omega Jones, also known as the Critical Bard across all social media channels. I am a professional actor and vocalist in the Midwest. I am the most recent jingle artist for Critical Role, making the opening and ending music for Critter Hug, which is a show, basically a signal boosting show for different places in the community. Do a lot of random stuff, play a lot of things, roll a lot of dice, newly into the DM's Guild content creating. Just an all-around bard trying to be a light in this chaotic world. That's me.
All right, Gabe.
Hi, I am Gabe James Games. I am a cosplayer, voice actor, designer. You might know me from a Kickstarter recently of a goblin dating sim. I made the class modifier module that was doing the ability score increases by class. And yeah, I just love creating.
TK? Uh-oh.
It's me. It's TK. Wasn't paying attention. Am now. Cool. It's me, TK Johnson. I write spooky stories on the internet. I am a dungeon master, narrative designer, writer, your favorite auntie. That's it. That's all I got. I wasn't prepared for this, so I'm going to mute myself and hope that this fades away.
You've been shamed. TJ. I'll just call you twice. I'll just make you go again.
Harsh but fair.
You get to do it with advantage. Do it twice. We'll remember the good one.
Harsh but fair.
TJ.
Hi, everybody. I'm TJ Storm. I'm an actor. I do voices. I am a motion capture actor. I have been Godzilla, Colossus, the Predator, Darth Vader. I get to work on a lot of cool video games and a lot of incredible movies and films and projects. In my spare time, I play Dungeons and Dragons. I've been a dungeon master for over 30 years, and I'm lucky to play with Todd Kenreck in Heroes of the Veil on D&D Beyond. So join us there as well, but thanks for coming.
Orion?
Hey, I'm Orion Black. I am a narrative designer on Dungeons and Dragons. I have a couple of my own games out, Mutants in the Night and Plot Armor. And I do a lot of fundraising and educational stuff online, like the Babylon Equity Project.
All right. And B-Dave?
B-Dave Walters, I say words about things. You will see me right here on D&D Beyond later today with Todd on Silver and Steel. Been playing D&D for a very long time. Co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons Dark and Wish, wrote that comic series, and DM of the streaming show.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the talk. First off, I expect everyone's been asked to join a lot of shows. All very recently. And it's a good point to make that it should not stop at last week or this week or the week after. That people should be showing up on shows long after this. And is everyone experiencing a little bit of burnout? Because I feel like I get a sense from a lot of my friends that they're being asked to constantly be on shows and do charity work. And I'm just checking in on everybody on that.
No, I don't think, I can't speak for everybody. I don't think it's burnout. For me, it's not that people are asking me to be on shows or to be a part of charities. It's the opposite. It's the, are you okay? How can I help? What can I do? All those. I'm getting burned out on that.
Oh, but, people asking about you?
Yeah.
I rescind my question.
Well, no, because it doesn't come from a place of, can I help you? It comes from a place of, I need to absolve my guilt. So what can I do?
It's performative.
But past that, no, because it's a really crappy situation that we're in, and the fact that we're finally being boosted in this time where Black lives are literally getting killed and arrested and destroyed. But I was talking with some people on the that I'm doing a roundtable with, and It's like, do you neglect or push away the attention, or do you use it for the better? So I'm at this point where I'm like, I have the exposure. I'm going to use it to better my people, and I'm going to continue to use it as much as I have it. Hopefully it doesn't stop. We all know how history is, but I'm going to keep being here regardless of people asking me to be here or not. So I might as well use what I got that's extra now, you know?
Gabe, you look like you were about to say something.
I'm actually not burnt out. It's almost the opposite for me, because I do want it to continue, but I've also been given more opportunities to do more of the creative stuff that I love. And that gives me more like availability. It gives me more free time. It requires me to rely less on my day job to do like what I need to do to be able to like afford my hobbies and passions, and instead be able to focus on my hobbies and passions and then create my own schedule. So now I have like a better setup. I have actual projects for the next month or two. And whenever I have my own work, I can schedule it and figure out more time to spend doing things that I love, rather than time decided by others where it's almost more effort to try to get back to what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. TK?
To be honest, I have not had a lot of people directly reach out to me, and for me personally, that's kind of the way I like it, because I try to make a habit of I just paid off all my student loan debt. I have a very stable job, and I have income that I can rely on. So I do not have a coffee or a Patreon or anything like that. So if I can divert people towards smaller creators, not less vocal, not smaller, but less visible creators, then I would prefer to do that. And I'll never get tired of that.
B Dave, how about for yourself? Because I already know that you work 18 hours a day as it is.
Yeah, no, that's not an exaggeration. Yeah, 7 days a week, about 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
No, I love it though. It's hard fun. I realize how fortunate I am to have an opportunity, to have a platform, to have a voice, to get to share stories and adventures with people and take them on a journey, to be in a place where now, when the world is, on fire, to actually have a chance that I can say something that might maybe alter someone's perception or make them feel a little better, kind of help them get through this. I realize that's a privilege. So, and I don't ever want to treat that like it is not the blessing that it is. So if it is within my power to do a thing, I do it. Yeah. And no, I'm great. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I did 10 streams over 5 days, 7 of which were just over this weekend. And yet yesterday I had to sleep. I finally slept yesterday. But besides that, though, all good.
It's kind of a big question. With all this visibility, do you have, and everyone has such a massive amount of experience on many different levels in this entire room. For a kid or someone who wants to, or someone who's in college right now, or anyone watching this who wants to get into tabletop, what advice do you have for them, particularly if they're a person of color right now? And what kind of problems are they going to run into?
If I can lead that, something that I wish someone had told me, if you reach out, like, because you want some guidance, the people that want to see you succeed, even if they can't help you, they'll guide you to someone that can. I thought that I had to do this all myself for the longest time. And then I finally came across someone who wanted to mentor me, and it made an entire world of a difference.
I would love to hear what Orion has to say about it, especially because, he's definitely climbed to the top of one of the mountains of the ranges. Yeah.
All right.
B Dave, Orion uses they, them.
Apologies.
No worries.
Okay. The thing that I would have to say about it is that I'm kind of along the lines with Gabe. You have to find the people who actually want to help you, and the people who want to help you are not always the people who say they want to help you. Because, and that's not like a completely malicious thing. I'm not saying everybody's out to get you or anything. It's just that a lot of people have an air of positivity because people want to be positive, but there are people who want to be positive and there are people who make positive actions. and you want to find people who make positive actions and will do so for you and will be in your corner. And those aren't always the people who have the biggest names, the people who will mentor you and stuff like that. There are people who are on your level or who are a little bit above you, who have a little bit more experience, who can guide you into having a community. And that, for me, in my experience, community has been the important part that's gotten me to where I am, because it's been 3 years, and that 3 years has been all people making it possible for me to present myself in the way that I wanted to be presented, supporting me and making it so that I didn't quit, because there were a lot of times where I wanted to. And the other half of that is connections, because getting into the room is a big deal, especially if you're a Black person, especially if you're a person of color. You have to have, there's this thing that I see often where like people use Twitter a lot, which is really good because Twitter is a great tool, but you have to understand that there are different levels to what we're doing. And for us, we are sort of on the ground together doing things, and we can reach a certain level, a certain height. But a lot of the people who make the decisions, who are signing paychecks, aren't on Twitter. They don't care about your social media presence. They don't care about any of that stuff. What really happens is that the work that you put on there, like, translates and like can give you buzz and hype, and that can get you closer to those people. But being able to get your names spoken in those conversations, because a lot of the time it's really just someone going, hey, does anyone know anybody who can do this? And it's like, oh, CB can do that. And they're like, oh, CB, where's their work? And then you show them the Twitter and they go, oh, I see their work there, you know, and it's good, and they accept it, right? But you have to get those people who are going to say your names in that room. So find those people who are willing to do that for you, and tell them that's exactly what you need, honestly.
Let me ask this to you. I think that was a very important thing to say, but I think the question isn't necessarily the thing isn't necessarily getting those people. It's how do you get those people in your corner? Because a lot of times people won't even give you the time of day because you're a person of color. So what worked for you to get people to actually consider you to be somebody actually worth listening to? That's the hard thing to say, but that's how it is.
Honestly, for me, it was just going one at a time and getting more and more credible people on my side, like getting the respect of a credible person, and then going to the next person, getting the respect of that credible person, and going and going and going, because a lot of it is building a reputation. And I don't have a reputation for the negative thing, my negative qualities. I have negative qualities. Everybody does. Nobody goes, oh, DC has these negative qualities, because the way that people end up talking about you is usually, this person is a human being, of course. They have flaws, they are not perfect. But here are the things that go above and beyond what's below their averages, because there are more of those than there are the negatives. And I feel like presenting it in that way to people, because I don't want to tell any Black person to go out there and be exceptional, honestly. I don't want you to be like, you have to be better than everybody else, because that's what we learn, and that is a truth in a lot of situations. Like, just being a human being is what we kind of like want to achieve when you're able to walk in the door without having to do 1,000 extra things. But that means you have to get 100 people, 200 people, 10,000 people to think of you as a human being who deserves to be in the room, you know? And it's hard, because you can't guarantee that those people are all going to be the ones who can put your name down and get you in. But it's the way that it worked for me. I know there's a lot of other ways to do it, but it's person to person, a lot of community.
I'd like to add to that, if I could. I actually found it sounds ridiculous, but I found it easier to be better than everybody in the room. That was my life growing up. I came from a time that there is those guys and there's you, and maybe if you're the best, they'll pay attention to you. But if you're not, zero chance. And even less if you don't look like those guys. So I was like, oh, so what you're saying is I just got to be the best? Okay. And I went for that mountain every time, because convincing everybody in the room that I'm just a human, that was actually harder, because I can't control the way they thought. So I tried to be the best that I could at one or two things, just small things. But every time I became a machine for that one thing, like an Olympian training for an event, I wanted to be the best. And then maybe they would listen to me and be like, what's your deal, man? How'd you get here? Oh, I'm glad you asked. And now I'm a human. All of a sudden, oh, they want to talk to me. They want to know who I am. They want to hire me for the thing. But that's okay. I didn't mind that because I had the chance. And to be honest, I'm here because of my choices then. That's how it was then. I am hoping that these protests, these events that are happening right now can help change that. I hope that people will talk to some of us because we're just there and we are applying for the same thing that everybody else is applying for. But in the meantime, be ready to be not just good, be great, because that's all that I know. And that's my suggestion when it's possible. Until we can convince everybody that we are indeed just the same as them, I think we're going to have to keep on proving that. Now, I would love to change that, but that's kind of what this is about. And thanks for having this opportunity for us to help that along.
Yeah, if I could plus one, you're plus one there. I think that's why all of these conversations are happening over these last few weeks. Is you have a lot of people that are like, oh shit, they've got feelings, you know? And I'm glad that we're getting to step forward here.
They think they're people.
That's all. But it's coming from a good place. Though it's coming from a good place, but it is true. I think, one, you should try to be superlative just because you just should. If you're going to take the time to do something, be the best you can at it, whatever it is. If you're going to become the whittling champion from Minnesota, like, become the best whittler you can. I would echo what everybody said here. I agree with all of it. It is, I would also say it is a small circle. It is a surprisingly small circle, and everybody knows everybody. And if there's somebody they don't know, they're one phone call away. So put your stuff out there, be participating in communities and try and help other people. I've shared this many times that, you know, my breaks all came from trying to help somebody else, from signal boosting somebody else, from lifting what they were doing. And then it came back around that they were like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Do you want to be a part of that? And just to give you an idea how small this circle is, I met TJ Storm maybe 15 years ago. You know, here in LA, we have a mutual friend, Damien Poitier, known him that whole time. You know, like, there's lots of people in this community that you just walk into a room and you're like, oh, word, you're here? Yeah. It's just try wherever you are. The joy of the internet is it is no longer geographical. You can start participating in communities, making connections, having your name known, let people know that you're writing. Then you start putting your stuff out there, let people see it, to Orion's point, and then they have that filed away in their mind. I just was approached by a game company over the weekend that said, we would like a female creator to write this module. And I knew a list of about 6 people, many of whom I'd never read anything they'd written, but I knew that's what they do, because they're in the circle. And point, I'm like, well, talk to her, and her type thing. And that really was it. But I would say more than anything, keep honing your craft, keep making, and don't wait for a break. You create your own luck.
Okay. Go ahead, CB.
And I just wanted to say, mine is a little, I don't want to call it pessimistic because it's not, but it's just more of the realistic front of everything. Not saying that everyone else has been wrong in any way, shape, or form. It's just at the end of the day, we do live in a society that wasn't made for us. So things are going to be 10 times harder. And I always go back to that scandal quote, you have to be twice as good as them to get half of what they get. That's not just a quote in a TV show. It's going to be hard because you're going to hear a lot of no's. No matter how good you are, you're going to hear a lot of no's. So for me, the advice is to keep pushing forward. Don't let those no's keep you down, because a no is just a 2-letter word that someone said to you. It doesn't make it true. You know, you can keep pushing forward and keep trying and trying and trying, because the minute you give up, then that no is real. You have to keep pushing forward. And at some point, it's not going to be soon. We all know that. It took a lot of time for a lot of us to get to where we are. But you have to keep doing it, because then it will happen, and then it will all be worthwhile. But just know that, I mean, we got your back, but it's going to be a tough journey. Just so breathe and do what you have to do to keep going and survive, and it'll be all good in the end.
TK, what's your experience been?
Well, it's not easy, especially getting into tabletop work, and it's never going to be easy. It is easier for some than others. Everybody here has given a lot of great insight, a lot of good advice. I would like to give you some actionable feedback. Learn SEO, learn search engine optimization, find out the keywords that people are talking about. Find allies that are in your community, meaning if you are a Black creator, find other Black creators. If you are a woman of color, find other women of color that you can at least talk to. They will typically turn out to be exceptional resources. And it helps to have somebody with a similar perspective. And who knows, maybe you can start an anthology on DM's Guild or something like that, and suddenly it blows up overnight, and then everybody wants to work with you. On that topic of allies, keep in mind there are some allies that are purely performative, and perhaps they are not malicious, but you need to be aware that not everybody's running the same race as you either. And that's, for the most part, okay. So just try and keep work and personal separate. Do everything that you can to hone that craft. Take advantage of every free resource that you can, including things that teach you how to use search engine algorithms. And you know what? If you're having trouble, reach out to me. DM me. I'll help you out, or I'll find someone who can.
DMs are open as well.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. How how do you think this industry can do better? And there's a long list. But like, what stands out like at the utmost? Because I feel like the TTRPG industry has a lot of missteps and has a lot of issues with representation.
I don't want to see any graphics or cartoons or pictures or blacked out profile pictures. I don't want to see any vague idea of donations or platitudes until you pledge to do a serious internal examination of who your board is, of who your executives are, of who your managerial staff is, the people in power, the people writing checks, the people doing hiring, the people in your HR. And if you sit there and go, we can't seem to hire anybody, what are you doing for in corporate change? What are you doing for training? Who among your staff is exceptional? Because if you can't find the person outside your company, maybe that person is inside your company. How many people of color do you have on your board? How many people of color do you have in your writing room? How many people do you have on salary? Is everybody who has a different perspective than you, or the majority of the people who read your content, who are, let's say, I don't know, straight cis white men, is everybody who doesn't look like them, are they contractors? Are they easily expendable? Are they disposable? Ask yourself that. Ask yourself what you are doing to further the genuine careers of the people that you claim to help. Because you know what? In a month from now, nobody's going to remember those profile pictures. Sorry, I get heated.
No.
Somebody else can have the floor if you so desire.
No, you killed
You
it.
nailed it.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything they want to add to that? Because I'm sure there's a lot that could be added.
I'm going to mute myself now. I'm sorry.
No, please. Everything you said was just 1,000% correct. I know the thing that helped me break through into the tabletop space is I was already doing Ask Your Black Geek Friend, and that was when the Tomb of Annihilation came out and their portrayal of Chult. And it was immediately obvious to me that no one with a drop of melanin had taken a look at this book at any point in the process. It was also clear that it was fairly well-meaning. It was just tone deaf. And I was very public and very adamant and gave every single thing that I said about it. And in the process, to their credit, I mean, WotC reached out to me and we talked about it. And that was part of how I got in as a creator to make some things. And there's been times since then that they've bounced some ideas off of me. And I was like, can't do that because of this. Or yeah, sure, that's no big deal or whatever. I think just checking with the kind of people that you're representing, exactly to TK's point, hire them. But if you don't hire them, at least give them some consulting hours to be like, could you just read this manuscript? Is this terrible? And let them come back to you and be like, yes, because blah, if anytime you're writing, and I'm very much of the opinion that you can write characters that aren't like you. The Black Panther was created by a white guy. I've written female characters. I've written white characters. You can, but you should check in with those people and just make sure. Check with as many voices, have as many voices as you can. If you're doing that, it's moving in the right direction.
Gabe, you got something?
Yeah, and B-Dave hit on the head, but I want to say, have as many voices as you can. I have grown very tired of seeing people over and over and over and say, I want to see diversity. I want diversity to happen. And then a month, and they personally have done nothing to change that. That doesn't mean that you want to see diversity happen. That means you like the idea of diversity happening outside of what you're doing. If people tell me I want to see more diverse voices at the table, and they are running a thing where they have like a stream show, and every game for the next 2 months has been the same people, like of a rotation, and none of them look like me at all in any way. You like the idea of diversity, but you did not put it in action into your actual life. And that does not make me believe you.
Or better yet, maybe you don't like the idea of diversity. I'm sorry, but you like people seeing you like the idea of diversity.
You better preach that word, because that's what I was going to get at next.
I'm sorry, Gabe. You can have that. You can have that back.
I love when people talk about like seeing diversity, but then if you never actually put it into action, you're literally just saying words to me, and then I don't have reason to believe you. I feel like you're trying to make me care about what you're doing because you're trying to sell an idea to me. But I don't need you to sell an idea to me. I need you to show me that I can trust your words.
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot the last 2 weeks, is like all these companies, and it's great that they're saying Black Lives Matter and all of that, and they hadn't before, but
I'm like, but you can say as much as you want, but like if we're not seeing it happen, if it's not something that's actively happening, not just today, not just tomorrow, not just next week, but in general, then you can keep your words. I got Webster's dictionary for that. I can find them myself. Like I don't the yapping. I'm done with the yapping, and I'm also done with the people who yap and don't listen. Like if we say something's wrong, like to put this as an example, if we say orcs are based in racist concepts and you don't listen to that, you don't care about diversity. You don't care about what we say because we're trying to tell you and you're not listening. So we have all of these things to tell you. If you're going to say that you care about us, then listen. And if you don't want to listen, then just admit that you're not going to listen. So we know not who to patronize. Like we know not to listen to. We can just push you in the corner of people who don't care, and that's that. Like that's something we can do. But if you want us to be someone who cares about your company, then walk what you're talking and continue to walk. Like you can't. The yapping is done. I'm done with it.
It seems to be a big issue too. People reacting and not listening. Even though you've got like thousands of people yelling about a particular issue, it's kind of amazing how much willingness there is just to like dismiss it.
Let me just add a tiny +1 to whoever's pearl clutching out there. The CB just said that orcs are based in racism, because they are. Anytime there's a correlation between race and morality, period, it's flawed. The orcs are bad. The high elves are good. They're fair. They're the good ones. Mordor was all inky black. Some of those things are products of their time. They brought along, some extra baggage with it that we now have the choice to jettison as we move forward. So.
There are a lot of things that deserve to stay in the 30s.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Orion. I know you were about to say something and I cut in front of you again.
It's all good.
Now there has been work done, correct, to like to separate, not necessarily in TTRPGs, but by some people in this room to actually like separate out like racial stats and things like that are problematic.
Not enough though.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest problems, and this is the same thing that TK had just said about where you're putting Black people, where you're putting people of color, where you're putting marginalized people. It's, you can go, I'm going to go to the level of comfort that I'm cool with, and I'm going to stop there. But that's never where the progress is actually made. That's a partial answer. We need people to commit all the way to fixing the problem, or you're not fixing the problem. You're putting a Band-Aid on it and going, oh, I feel good about it now, so I'm going to stop, rather than actually pushing all the way. It's why when TK was bringing up where you're hiring people and how many cishet white dudes you have and stuff like that, it's like how a lot of people on Kickstarter, they say, oh, I'm going to put a bunch of Black people on as we're going to be stretch goals, but that's putting Black people way, way, way at the far end of your product. When you go from the structure of your team is, here is the centerpiece, here's who's making all the content, here's the people that I have on board, and then here are all the extra people way out in the atmosphere that you can get if you put in enough money. So you're benefiting personally off of bringing in more people of color, and they're usually not getting the benefit to nearly the same degree. So that's what we're seeing on a lot of people make progressive action. It's enough to go, well, other usually white progressive people are more comfortable with what we're doing now, so they will continue to give us money, but we're not going to go far enough to actually make the change that needs to be made because we got the money.
And to piggyback off of that, and this is going to feel like a call out, and I promise it's not. I promise it's not. But thinking about tabletoppers and like playing games and things, Black people and people of color should not just be your guest characters; they should be main cast members. Period. Because it goes to, if I'm just going to be a guest, then you're using my Blackness to be seen, so you can be seen as progressive, and then people care about you, or people care about you more, or see that you're an ally. That's still a level of performance. You're just a stage manager now, not the actor. You need to make sure that you're actually actively putting people in front constantly. You can't just do it once. You can't just do it twice and then say, well, we did what we need to do. Hi, I'm here and I'm a progressive white person. That's not how it works. You got to continue that. And I know that sometimes contracts are in place or things of that nature are in place, but when you can, do it. And don't make them an afterthought. Don't make them a second thought. Don't think about them after you've already been said and done, and then somebody drops the show and you say, oh, I need somebody to fill. Here's a Black person. Like, that's not how we work. We're Black, whether you want us to be or not. So that's that.
Yeah, I think it'd be wished away there wouldn't be any of us anymore. But I would say two things. One call out and two positive things. One, I was just talking about that voices in the room thing. I was just approached by literally a multi-billion-dollar company with an ad campaign, and they were like, is this okay? And it was horrifically racist. I mean,
oh no,
it was like bamboozled minstrel level racist. And I was like, yo, you cannot. And at first they were like, well, but we've already spent the money and it's already gone to the printers. I'm like, I'm telling you, don't do it. And to their credit, to their credit,
they consulted you after printing.
What was the point of asking you?
Oh, yeah. They did stop. They didn't put it out. But it was like so far gone. But it had gone through so many hands and eyes where either one, nobody realized it was wrong, or felt safe to say it was wrong. That's a different thing too. You also have to have a culture where you will listen when people voice concerns. Now, I would say two positive things. I've had extremely great experiences with D&D Beyond, wanting to lift me as a content creator and a performer. Thank you, Todd. Not just you. From top to bottom, I've always had good experiences with D&D Beyond. Also, shout out to Jason Carl. When he cast Vampire the Masquerade, LA by Night, he could have had anybody. And he made a point of the four of us, three of us are people of color, because he wanted the show to be reflective of where they were trying to take the game and take the company, which he didn't have to do. So while I will rinse, people publicly for doing the opposite. I also want to make sure that, you know, I at least give that credit where credit is due when people are trying to do the right thing.
TJ, where do you see there like changes that can be made for the positive? So, is there anything that we haven't already brought up and discussed?
We have to keep on it. I mean, right now we're in a blip.
Yeah.
It's like when Thanos snapped his fingers. There's a blip, there's a change right now, but 2 weeks from now, all of that could go away. And I do not want to see this step. This is a single step. And this is because a man died on camera.
Yeah.
That is all. That's not enough. But it is a step, but we can't go back. I just read something the other day. This guy was looking at all of this stuff and he goes, look, what I'm seeing right now looks exactly like what happened in 1919. Then I saw a story about the reports of the riots in 1935, which looked exactly like the report of the riots and the protests in 1969, which looks exactly like it does right now. We haven't advanced that much from 1919. I mean, yeah, there is a difference and there's a change, but man, we should be way ahead of 19. That was 100 years ago. We need to stay here. We need to throw an anchor down and say this is. People love saying this is the new normal. Well, this is the new normal. This is how it should have been in 1919, but this is where we're at today. This is where we need to stay, and we need to change a lot to make that happen. I mean, it's systemic. There is so much, and it is so complicated. I'm arguing with people every day online. That's become my new thing since I'm stuck at home. Every single day, I'm arguing with people who may not understand how racism works, or they're like, I'm not racist, I'm bleh. And I'm like, okay, but here's what you haven't thought about. I direct them towards the 13th Amendment, the Netflix show. I direct them towards certain Twitter things that Trevor Noah recently shared of this woman going off. I can't remember what her name is, but man, it's so powerful.
That video is powerful.
It blew my mind. I was like, please. And I try to share it, but I'm afraid that it doesn't get to the right ears. It doesn't get to the people that need to hear it. Some people want to say all lives matter. And I shared one thing. And honestly, some people were like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Okay. That's a step. We need those baby steps to stay in the forward position. We need to advance nonstop. And I don't know how to do that. I mean, we're listening now because of the horror from, 3 weeks ago. But can we do this without horror? I don't know how, but that's what we need to do.
Can also, don't be afraid to admit that you've held some erroneous beliefs or you just didn't know. It's fine. It's fine. That's just growing as a person. I'll tell you something from my own personal experience. When the Me Too movement really kicked in, I was aware of the fact that, women are sexually harassed, catcalled, this, and then the stories started coming out of how basically every woman has horror stories. I did not know that. I was 40 years old, okay? And like to think that I'm respectful of women. I listen, I try to treat them well. I didn't know how bad it was constantly for many women in this world. I didn't know. When I found out, I was like, oh, okay, I will make sure I adjust my behavior. I will make sure I adjust what I look for in things that are happening around me. That's all anybody's asking you to do. It is fine if you didn't know before now, but now you know. Now you know, because as I've said, I used to say they kill us in the street like dogs, but that's not true. Because if there was video footage of an officer kneeling on a dog's neck for 9 minutes until it died, they would have had him run up to the courthouse that day. If a cop shot a dog in the street and stood there and watched it die, no one would have been like, well, the dog did bark at him, and it bit someone in 2016. It's from a known aggressive breed. No, that wouldn't happen. And it wouldn't happen. And if you know that's the truth, then you're saying out loud that Black people have less value in this country than dogs.
They would put that cop in witness protection.
Yeah.
He would have to change his
That
name.
cop would be in Alcatraz. Let's be real.
I cannot. There would be more police officers telling that cop what you did was bad and stopping him.
Right.
Everybody,
No, it's real. It's real. No,
Yeah.
it's real.
Yeah.
It's sad because it makes. No, the worst part is I want to say it makes no sense, but again, this is a society. This is a country who was quite literally built on the backs of Native people and Black people. So we know that we are less than animals to them because we've seen it. We've felt it for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's at the point where, and I say this not to be like that Malcolm X gung-ho person, but in that video, and I've said it before too, people are lucky we're just looking for justice and not revenge. Like, all we're asking for is the minimum. Just respect us and respect our craft and respect our work and respect our time. I don't know why that's so hard to do. I don't get it. And I don't think I'll ever get it. It's like...
I realize D&D Beyond is a place of peace and love. And
that's okay, though.
We're gonna have a good time on Silver and Steel tonight. We're going to have a good time. But let me point something out. That is the hypocrisy of all the Second Amendment crap. That is what they're afraid of, is what CB's saying, that we would want revenge. That's what they're stockpiling the guns for. It's not tyranny. It's not soldiers on the street, because, spoiler alert, that's happening now. Yeah. American citizens are being tear gassed and overrun with riot shields. Police were on the streets. Now,
and
where
flashing tires.
Things that are outlawed in like warfare, but is considered reasonable to handle protests.
Attacking medical tents.
Oh, no. Let's not say protest, because they didn't do it for the ones who was getting mad because they couldn't go to work because of Corona. No tear gas went to them.
That's not a protest. That's a complaint.
I agree, but they called it a protest. So no, we know that they'll use it for certain people.
Well, and the thing is, with all of this going on, the news cycle eventually will get tired of this particular topic, as it did about 2 years ago. Suddenly, it was constantly bringing up issues with cops. And then all of a sudden, there were no issues with cops for 2 years. Nothing. Not one news story.
How strange.
Crazy.
And I think everyone has to expect that is about to happen again.
Yeah.
But how to change it?
Yeah, Ryan's about to say something.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, my mic is not being kind. But one of the things that's important to bring up about that is, and one of the reasons why we all have such a clear understanding of this, is because our Blackness gives us a history, even just our own personal histories, of being told things that sounded so absurd that we didn't believe them. When you're a child and your parent says, don't go over to that white person's house because XYZ. And you're like, why? That makes no sense to me. And you have that experience and you go, oh. And then you look back on history, and this is one of the worst parts that we're not taught. And I mean, we, as in everybody in the United States, we're not taught enough of what our actual US history is, which intertwines with Black history down to the bone, and which is largely the disruption and destruction of Black communities at any point where we tried to have stable, normal lives that, let me tell you, 110% of the time had nothing to do with the instability or lives of white people at all. There have been so many opportunities in our time. There was a long tweet thread that I retweeted the other day, because I didn't know of that many of them, but there are many cities over the last 200 years even that have been built up by Black people who ended up making it into the middle class, making it into the middle upper class and beyond, and making our own towns, cities, areas, communities, and for them to have been destroyed systematically every single time, systematically and systemically, every single time. And so when you look at the experiences of us, we bring this into Tabletop, we're always starting from a negative number. If everyone starts at 0, we are starting at a negative. And the more marginalized you are, the farther back into the negatives you are. Because you always have to get to a point where people start seeing you as a human being. But like TJ said, sometimes you have to work, often, most of the time, you have to work 2 or 3 times as hard to be seen as a human being. You have to impress people beyond belief to be seen as a human being. You have to swallow the fact that people will still ignore the fact that you are Black, ignore the fact that the things that they do, the content that they create, the things that they are putting forward are harmful to you and millions, billions of other people in the world in order to try and fix just a little bit. And so I will top this off with a little bit of advice. That is what you're in for when you get into tabletop role-playing games, because that is what is at the core of it. It comes from the fantasy that is built on a adjacent level of prejudice that comes along with the times that fantasy was built upon. So when you're playing those games and you're changing those things, you're doing something that is revolutionary and is important. And all the people here are doing something that's revolutionary and important, that's building a foundation for the rest of us to move on from. So
I'd like to add on to that if I could. He's talking about being here when everybody else might be here, to be seen as if you're here. But a lot of people don't understand what it is to be Black in America. And I think that that's part of the conversation right now. I explained to one of my friends, they were like, I can't believe that happened. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, here in America in this day and age. I'm like, that's the one that was caught on film, first off. Second, that happens every single day to all of us. All of us, that happens every single day. And I'm saying this because there's a lot of people that are watching or will watch this video, and they're like, what in the hell are you guys talking about? They don't understand our situation or what we have to go through on a daily basis. They have some vague idea, but I want to give them just the vaguest idea of what it's like. When I was a kid, I just watched this show called Space Force. And I was watching the daughter. She's Steve Carell's daughter. And she acts like an average teenager. She's mopey and grumpy, and she doesn't listen to what her dad says, and she just walks out not cleaning the mess. First off, I would have got my ass beat for that. Second, I straight up could never. I moped around for a while, and my mom, I'm half Black, half white. Simple, to put it simply. My mom, who was white, would always say, "You have got to smile because you are scaring people." She would say that all the time. And white kids don't got to smile. They don't have to smile. But I was just like, that was my daily face. One day, somebody said something that made me laugh or smile. Like, oh, you got a nice smile. And I learned at that moment, I make people who don't look like me more comfortable if I smile. I didn't think about that. Now, the other kids in the school, nobody thought about them really. But if I was like this, they were like, oh, who are you? I learned that behavior. It was a survival behavior that I had to learn. Now, that's not normal, but that was my normal. Flash forward, I told somebody, look, between the ages of 17 and 35, 40, I got pulled over by police on average once every 3 months. I don't drink. I've never used a drug in my entire life. What in the fuck am I getting pulled over for that much? I didn't even have that great of a car. I couldn't go that fast. So I feel like I'm getting pulled over more than is normal. And one time I was in the car with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend at that time was part of the judicial branch of government. She was, no joke, she was serious. And she's like, what are they pulling us over for? I'm like, watch. This cop got out of his car, leaned into my window. He's like, so, you on probation? First words out of his mouth. And I was like, and she turned a different shade. She was like, and I just put my hand on her arm, and I was like, no, officer. How can I help you? Because I'm used to it. It's not even offensive to me. We're all used to what we have to do to not get killed, which is some bullshit, but we're used to it. So she witnessed firsthand. It happened 3 times with her in the car, and she could not believe her what was happening, because she wasn't. She appeared, Caucasian for the most part. So it never happened to her. if it doesn't happen to you, you can't begin to understand it. Now, that's good for role playing. That lets us go into those places that we may never have gone before, and I'm happy for that. But on the other side, the real life of it is, it's not easy, and that is the kind of stuff that I want people to understand that we're fighting against. All of us have experienced different versions of that, but it comes from the same place, and it is ugly, and it is toxic, and it changes your point of view of the police, of our system. We don't feel the same way as other people might feel, because the system's always pointing a light in our face, being like, so, you're on probation? Did you do something wrong? That's how we feel that when you're looking at us with that weird look. That's all I got to say about that.
I know we're short on time.
No. We're gonna go long if we need to go long.
I remember right when this first started, 2 weeks ago now, which feels like 6 months ago, people were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "Did you see what happened?" "Yeah." "Aren't you upset?" "Yeah." But I'm used to it, And then some of the protests started. I was like, "Oh, word, y'all are mad too?" "Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Well, you actually want to hear some stuff. Well, let me lay it on you." But I mean, it's to me, my moment of peak outrage was 2016 when Philando Castile and Alton Sterling got killed in the same week. That was when I was like, what?
He did everything right.
Yep.
Everything that people been telling us for years to do. Speak to the man, keep your eyes on him, show him where your hands are. If you got a weapon, you need to tell him you got it. You need to tell him you're reaching into your back pocket. That man shot into the car with a child in the back seat, who had to then comfort her mother.
And the craziest part about that story is, who knows what he would have done if she wasn't live streaming. He murdered that man knowing she was live streaming. Who knows what would have happened next? So to me, I think you have to understand, y'all, dear viewer, that all of us are mad. All of us are mad. Some of us compartmentalize it differently. I myself like to think of myself as a fairly cheerful, optimistic person, so I kind of had to put it in a little box over here. But we've all had those experiences TJ's talking about, all of us, some of us fatally. And it's now, I think what is interesting to me about what's happening in these protests, and first of all, y'all, if you have donated, if you have protested, if you've gone out, thank you, especially if you don't look like us. Even if you look like us, thank you. You don't look like us, thank you, because that is what will enact meaningful change. But I'm seeing now, y'all, it's a whole lot of white folks getting beat up by the cops in some of those videos. I saw this girl, she looks like a volleyball player, and she's getting hit with the riot shield, and she's like flying backwards, and she looks like an Amazon getting knocked down. And I looked at it and I'm like, she did more for this struggle with that picture than if they shot 500 people that look just like me in the face, just like blam, because the idea that there is an insipid systemic problem in that freaking guy in the White House said today that 75-year-old man that they knocked down and cracked his head on the pavement and then walked past and watched him bleed. Well, maybe he was an Antifa plant. I'm like, you haven't learned anything. You haven't learned anything. And that, my friends, is the real battle. The real battle's in November. So don't get exhausted. Don't get worn out. Stick with it until then, because that is what we are up against. That level of hatred and intolerance and bigotry that would attempt to rationalize a 75-year-old man getting his head cracked on the pavement. You have no idea what they would do to me.
Go ahead, TK. I can go after you.
I'm sorry. I'd just like to take a moment, because we are talking about our experiences and stuff. My experiences are not like a lot of y'all's, specifically because I grew up assigned female at birth. I grew up with soft hair. That's Instagram kinky curly. I grew up with light skin. And I'm going to tell any biracial people with reach in the TTRPG community, we are safe. People choose us because we appear safe, because we're Black, but not too Black. So that is our responsibility to uplift our darker skinned cousins. that is on us. If you feel uncomfortable being called out, being light-skinned and approachable, I don't know what to tell you. Take a couple minutes, take it to the altar, but you need to get to work too, because we've been talking about how much we want our seat at the cookout too. This is the cookout.
Where
So
I just really wanted to quickly say, can we talk about Philando Castile and those who have been killed in the past? I've said it on the roundtable last week, and I've said it on my Twitter. I was there. I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I used to live in Ferguson. I was there when it happened. Luckily, I was coming from rehearsal when he actually got killed, so I could get away from the chaos that was unfolding. I was there when Darren Wilson didn't get indicted. I saw everything. And to go back to what B. Dave said, and TJ and everyone, honestly, we're not saying, it's like hard to even speak about it. All we are asking is for people to listen. Listen to what we're saying. Listen to the words we are giving you. See our actions, see what we're doing. We're not saying it and doing it for nothing, y'all. Because if we was, racism wouldn't exist. If we didn't have to talk about it, trust me, we wouldn't. Because we don't want to go through it on a daily, 24/7, 365 days of a damn year. But the fact of the matter is, it's real. So if you can do something about that, if you can be a helping hand, if you can listen, if you can be out there like Queen Amazon getting knocked out by a police officer, don't want that to happen, but we want that action. We want y'all to just understand what we're going through, because you will never be able to feel it yourself. So get it from us, take that anger, and then fight for us. That's it. And if that's too hard, then that's not on me. That's not on any of us. That's not on any Black person you know. But just listen. Just try.
And that's the thing. Like, any white person needs to understand, I being a white person, just because you didn't experience something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because you can't imagine that this thing is happening right now doesn't mean it isn't happening. Like, your imagination is not your reality. That has to stop. Just because you can't imagine people are going through all this stuff, like, it's no one's job to convince you. First of all, like, if people tell you this is happening, it's happening. Just because you can't imagine it happening, it's not the same. I grew up in a really tiny, diverse bubble growing up as a kid, and then I moved to Seattle, and I thought everything must be fine and wonderful, and everyone's treated the same, and it's great. And then when my friends visited me, and on the way to a movie that was 15 minutes away, we got pulled over. And I thought that was weird. And on the way back from that movie, we got pulled over again by another cop in the exact same neighborhood. I'd never been pulled over in the 8 years I lived there. Twice in one night with the same friend. Just because you cannot imagine it. And I looked over at my friend, and he looked at me like, because I'm stupid.
Must be Friday. Yep. No, I got one too, but
Really quickly, Gabe.
I want to hear what Gabe has to say.
Okay, yes.
So 2 years ago, I was working with someone, and they were 19. And it was the most surreal experience of my life, because it's the kind of thing that people say, this stuff doesn't happen. Oh, let me tell you. They literally were just like, Gabe, I have a question. Sure, what's up? What kind of Black are you? And they weren't asking me for the reason you think. They weren't asking me. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Where did your ancestors come from? And I'm like, Africa. But they're like, so where specifically? I don't know. Why don't you know? So this led to a 20-minute conversation where I found out they were homeschooled and their parents never touched on slavery. Ever. So they had to learn about slavery from a 25-year-old Black man. This was 2 years ago. It's very real. And in my head, I'm like, the problem was this person was genuinely ignorant, so I knew it wasn't even malintent. It was literally ignorance. And it's like, this is one person. This is one instance. So that means there are thousands of people that were taught about it and told all kinds of ridiculous nonsense that was even worse than this person knowing nothing about it. But they had to learn from a 25-year-old Black man about slavery for the first time because their parents avoided telling them. Now, this also led to me asking if they knew like they had a Black friend at all, and they said no, and then I stopped hanging out with that person. But like, it's so genuinely common that it's frustrating because I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised. And that's a problem.
Really quickly, so you touched on it, and like it's something that to get people, because sometimes people need to understand exactly where we come from. How many people can actually go back through their genealogy and figure out exactly where they came from? How many Black people know exactly what country they came from in Africa? I'll wait. You can't. But then you remember that we can't do that because our people were wrongfully stolen from our home, forced to live here and work for you, go through bullshit for the past 2,000 years, many years, and we're still dealing with bullshit today. It's the privilege that so many people have. The smallest of things, like you're saying, what kind of Black are you? We don't even know that. That's how effed up it is to be Black in America. And I want to also use this moment to also say, stop saying people of color. We're talking about Black people. And I say that because I'm not saying that other races aren't going through problems. Not saying that at all. But right now, we're focusing on Black issues. So please, using the word Black isn't a bad thing. It's never been a bad thing. Just use it. That's all.
You know, you talk about stories. I can tell you, I had one that this is just one. I can spend the rest of the day with just these. It was July 16th, 1999. And I know that because that was the day the Blair Witch Project came out. I went to see the movie with a friend of mine. And he was a white guy. And we were driving an old BMW. There was my white friend driving, me in the passenger seat, another Black guy in the back, and a girl I was dating at the time in the back who was also Black. And we're driving along, and we pull up to an off-ramp to go head to his house, and a cop car pulled up next to me. And I turned and I just looked at the cop, completely straight-faced, then I turned back forward. And I literally said out loud, "Here we go." Woo! Lights came on. And my buddy was like, "What's the problem?" I'm like, "You're about to find out." So they pull us over. We stop. 3 more cop cars come in from every direction. And it's like, okay, I'm like, let me do the talking. And they, you're like, license and registration, they're shining lights on all of us. And he opens the glove box and he's got a car stereo inside. Because at the time we worked at Best Buy and he literally was taking his thing in to get serviced. And it so happens that he had the receipt. It so happens. But I remember I was a professional bodyguard, y'all. I've been in a lot of dangerous situations. I've never felt my death was imminent more in my entire life than that moment. When he opened that glove box and that car stereo fell out, I was like, well, this is the end. Okay, this is the end. And they pulled him out and grilled him and pulling us out and grilling us. And they asked us the same story 4 times. Why are we out here? And it wasn't until I finally remembered I had the movie ticket stub to prove we'd been at the movies that they sort of like let us go, you know? But I mean, 45 minutes over literally nothing. We're just being there, you know? That's one of dozens of stories. Yeah.
How old were y'all when your parents gave you the talk? And I know people in this chat who aren't Black are thinking birds and the bees. No. How old were y'all when your parents sat you down and taught you how to talk to a police officer?
8.
I was also 8.
I want to say,
I'll one up you. I have 2 little Black children in this house that got the talk when they were 8.
Oh, that's rough. Yeah, we're going to have to give it to my nephew pretty soon.
I was in foster care for most of my life. It came from a white couple.
Yeah. I was 6 from my grandmother who was born and raised in Selma, Tennessee.
I don't remember because it happened a lot. My parents, my parents are from. They're both from South Chicago.
Oh yeah.
and like they grew up. If y'all know what South Chicago was like in like the early 50s or late 50s, early 60s, there was a lot to talk about. And there was a lot that wasn't talked about that was just sort of like really traumatic. Now that I think about it, that it was like trauma my parents just didn't talk about. I actually wanted to bring up my cop story. Hey, no, because one of the things one of the reasons I like bringing up this story is because people say that like you have to do all the things right, and people say like you have to be wearing the right things and you have to speak like you have to code white, like you have to speak white, which is really just
code switching. Yep.
Yeah, code switching.
It was 2012 because I was 22 at the time, and it was actually around this time because it was either the 4th of July or the day after. It must have been the 4th of July because I went to see Spider-Man 2, but it was the one with Andrew
Garfield.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So the reason it was important is because we were on our way back to where my friends had parked the car. They were talking about how much they didn't like the movie, and the car window was broken into and the car stereo was stolen. That's why it reminded me. And so my friend called the cops, which was a mistake. I went down the street to make sure that there was no danger because I'm pretty good at spotting when there's like thieves or, something like that around, dangerous situations. So I go and I check it out. Nobody seems to be around, but there's a person across from me. It's like a T section. And on the other side of the T section, there's someone just standing there smoking a cigarette. And then I look down the street and there's someone on the corner. And that person on the corner stands there while both of the crossing signs go off on each side. So I go back to my friends and I go, we are not particularly safe because that person is standing there for a reason. And I feel like they're a lookout. So I'm trying to protect my friends with my knowledge. We stay there for a while, but we see that one of the two people who I had seen circled us from behind. They walked down the street behind us. There was nobody else out there but us and these two people at quite a distance. And so I tell my friends, there's not a lot of light in this alleyway. I tell my friends that we should walk down the street back towards where there are some lights. So we walk down that way. And when we get across the street, the two people who had been in the area start walking down the street we were on towards us. And when they get to a certain distance, they're underneath the lights that we had just passed under. And one of them puts their hand into their jacket, their like hoodie pocket. It's that one big pocket across the middle. They put their hand in there. And so I immediately look at my friends and I say, run, and I book it as fast as I can. I'm 10 times faster than my friends at that particular point in my life. So I turn around to see if they're safe, if they need to move anywhere. And so I see there's a corner up on the left and we take this left. Now, when I'm about to take this left, because this all happened very, very quickly, we're about to take this left and I hear a bunch of sirens going off and they're coming closer. So I figure there is a crime in the area and maybe we can hail these cops. So I take a left and there's this parking lot for this like really small hotel. So we go over there and the cops are coming directly down the street and we throw our hands up in the air and I'm waving them, like signaling them, like, please stop, because I feel like someone's going to hurt us. So in an instant, 3 cop cars end up stopping, but they drive right up to us, like really close. And they say, get on the ground, put your hands behind your back. But I put my hands behind my back like this. This is important because I'm on the ground, and in this moment, I got really calm. Like I got like that Zen calm, and I feel like a lot of Black people have this experience when you have a cop interaction where you don't get afraid. You're just like
you kind of get shut down.
Yeah,
it's you have to disassociate because if you show emotion,
anything, that's a problem. That's a reason for them to actually pull the trigger.
Yeah. So in that moment, in the most polite voice, I'm like, excuse me, officer. Like I'm asking to borrow a cup of sugar. My I think when my ID was in my left pocket, I'm like, my ID is there. I can get it if you'd like it, because I'm not a criminal. I didn't say that part, but I reach in my pocket and I get it. But when I get up, because he says, okay, you can go ahead, I get up and I see that my two friends have both of their arms behind their back this way. They're cuffed, and there were guns pointed at their heads. And when I had looked up, there was a gun pointed at my head. This person was that far away from me with a gun pointed at my head. And I gave them my ID, and my friend cracked a joke, and that like disarmed them a little bit because they checked all of our IDs and they're like, they're not the people. My friend had told them we had called the cops on this particular situation, and they found his ID. They saw that it matched, and so we were good. But then we see that the two people who were chasing us come around the corner, and they're undercover cops. They had gotten a call that there was a break-in in that alleyway from someone who lived in the apartments above where we were standing. And those people thought that we had broken into our own vehicle and had been standing there for like an hour for some reason.
Like you do.
Like you do. And so the undercover cops come up to us and they go, why did you run? They go, we didn't know you were cops. And then they laugh at us and we end up driving home. They said, like, go to the precinct to like write in all the stuff, and we didn't do any of that stuff. We were just like, let's just go home. But the thing about that whole moment and how that broke down is every time when someone says the way that you talk, the way that you dress, the blah, blah, all that stuff, I was working at the fossil store at the time. I was wearing my fossil clothes and everything. They were real nice. I was speaking as politely as I possibly could. I did everything they asked for. But the immediate reaction they had to just three people were to draw guns at us and like point them directly at our heads, like super close. And it's the most surreal thing that had happened. And as we told the story for a couple of years after, it was this thing that we kind of joked about, but like the trauma set in a little bit later. And we realized that like, that's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. And that's a situation that would have gone very differently if the circumstances were a little different. If my other two friends were Black, I don't know how that would have gone down. They were both half white, half Hispanic. So they were very light-skinned. I felt significantly safer in that situation. There's a lot of factors that like are just different for us. And when those things happen, it clicks. And we'll never have that situation. So you just have to believe us. You have to take our word for it because we deserve it.
And don't think that like just because you moved to another town, like you think this town is now safe or something. Like, because I thought Seattle was a very liberal town, and I was wantingly stupid about it. Like that is not. I didn't treat it like the town I came from, and that was my first mistake.
Well, yeah, to plus one what Orion just said, that the other messed up thing about that is had that gone the wrong way, had it been unfortunate, the story would not have been unarmed Black kid gets killed after calling cops for their own vehicle. It would have been, belligerent suspect fled from patrol officers, who opened fire in the line of duty, and then they would have put up all the pictures of you that are all like photoshopped and look all dark and menacing, get you at your worst. I mean, again, there is some correlation between, liberality and trying to stand up for these type things. But remember, Amy Cooper, let us not forget, that was just like 2 weeks ago. It feels like it was a year and a half. That just happened. Was a liberal that gave money to Obama, It's not just that. It's insidious. There's many, 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 many layers. The only difference is some people, that stuff's right up there on the surface, and they literally will have it written across their chest. Other people, you got to get down a little bit to find it. Yeah.
I think people seem to forget that integration of schools and society is still within people's living lifetime. Yeah. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was 1954.
Ruby Bridges is 65. And I just shared this story yesterday on my YouTube. My dad is missing a tooth because he got beat up at the protests for Central Park's desegregation. My father, his grandfather was a slave. His grandfather was an actual slave. That's how recent this was.
Yeah, people love to assume, they love to say racism doesn't exist anymore, blah, blah, blah. You act like this was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. No, this was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we're still actively feeling everything that our ancestors felt today.
I am 33 years old. When I moved to Southern Kentucky as a small child, interracial marriage had a 50% disapproval rate in the United States. That was in the 1990s.
And don't act like racism and slavery still doesn't exist. It gets rebranded and called a prison.
Yep.
Yeah.
Prison system. It was never, the slave trade was never abolished in the United States.
Who was it? I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, people say it's getting worse. It's not. It's just getting recorded. That's all.
It's just so interesting because it's like
the cell phone is like saving people right now. Like,
I can't remember who said it, but they were like, dystopian literature is just normal. Like, it's normal oppression that instead of centering people of color and Black people, now centers young liberal white women.
I should have had coffee.
I should have had a V8 because I can't.
I don't know how to bring this around to how we fix tabletop.
I mean,
the thing is, like, look at all of this conversation that just happened, and you're like, if you don't think there's a problem in any industry, given all of this and everything that's going on right now, if you don't think that like goes up to, say, the entire tabletop industry and the video game industry and the entertainment industry and every single place you might go in America.
Well, and especially in the entertainment industry, that runs so much. The fuel of the entertainment industry is either neutrality or toxic positivity. And we also run on a lot of social currency. So anybody who's been softly banned because they had an opinion, well, that's okay.
People still get sensitive about Black Captain America. Like, come on.
Yeah. I like to ask people, and I mentioned this in our chat. I like asking people, and oftentimes they have to think about it. When was the first time you had a Black person at your table? And if you were the Black person at the table, how many times were you the only Black person at the table? Have you never had a Black person at your table? Why is that? If you're like, well, I don't have any Black friends. Really? Or is it, well, you know what? I like to keep it with my close circle of friends. And then the question is, do all of your friends look like you? Why is that?
And real quick, just comment on that real quick. People love to say they don't have any Black friends or they don't know any Black friends. And when the world wasn't broken because of coronavirus, that was somewhat okay. Now we're all playing online. What's the excuse? What a thought. B-Dave, you have something to say?
Yeah, I agree with all. I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree with everything that everyone has said this entire time. I think fixing tabletop, and I think Orion's point of the fantasy is built off of a flawed systemic model of an ideal society was very interesting observation that I'd never thought of and definitely will not forget. I think you just be aware of who's telling the stories, partake in other people's stories, in advance and signal post other people's stories. And let me say outright, I shouldn't have to, but it comes up. Look, y'all, we got nothing against white males. We got nothing against white people. Stan Lee was white, and we owe him a lot. So was Jack Kirby.
Stan Lee was my guy.
George Lucas. It's fine. You don't have to feel guilty for who you are and what you are. If you yourself have not participated in the aiding and abetting of racist acts, actively or passively, you got nothing to apologize for. Just be aware and try and use your platform to move forward. So partake of stories of different people, try and include different kinds of people, signal boost different kinds of people, because we got plenty of stories to tell, man. We've been telling stories this whole time. So yeah, just listen to them because they're dope.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you want other perspectives too? Like, why do we just want the same story told over and over again? Like, I don't understand that. But you were saying something, Orion?
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Swordsfall, who is working on an Afrofuturistic world that is built by him, a Black man. He's trying very hard as well to get into intersectional issues like I'm non-binary, as is TK, making sure that it's a world that represents us well and comes from the roots in order to have a world that we can enjoy that doesn't run into these same issues. And those are the kind of things that we need to push and support, as well as doing things like in D&D, in whatever game that you play, making those changes, because it's important for us to be able to find a home there, both in the original content and at the table with people.
All right. Does everyone have? I think everyone have a closing thought on everything that can be changed. I mean, there was a lot more I want to talk about, like walking into a convention space and not feeling welcome. Conventions are always awkward.
Well, we walk into a grocery store and not feel welcome. So
no,
it's not really
I know,
different from a convention.
Yeah.
Not to put that to the side, but I'm like, that's a problem we always have. So we've learned to just turn that off.
Yep. I'm gigantic. People get out of my way. But yeah.
Same. Yeah, I'm pretty big. So
yeah, if you're a convention space and you're wondering how you can be more inclusive to Black people, disabled people, gay people, all of those people are also Black. So let's just say Black people. Have Black people on your con staff. And I'm not talking about your free badge volunteers. I'm talking about your board. Pay us.
Yeah.
They will do a lot to make your con more inclusive. People, if you go to a con and you don't feel welcome, if they don't have a diversity lounge or something, pick 2 or 3 panels that you want to be at, leave the con otherwise, because it ain't worth it. Go to a Starbucks or something, not Starbucks. But, go to a library or something like that, hang out in your hotel, do something fun. You're in the city. You do not by any means have to dedicate your entire life to that convention for that weekend. Pick the panels you wanted to go to, pick the games you wanted to go to, and preserve your safety, preserve your health and your peace of mind, because you don't need to put up with that for nothing. White people, you want to help? Don't center your feelings.
Yeah.
Stop centering your feelings. Stop feeling like you got to be a hero. That's it.
Yeah.
One last little thing for the people who aren't creating, a lot of people are asking us, how can I help? What can I do? You've heard a lot of that here, but you want to just take a small step, play a character that isn't your standard European character. Grab a Chinese character, grab a character from Chult, grab a huge Theros thunderbolt wielding ebony-skinned warrior, be those people and do that thing. What does that feel like? Because that's all that we're doing. We're pretending, we're imagining. Let's step into our shoes for a night. Have fun. That's what this is about in the end. And that's why we got into this, because we love it. This is our passion. Tell these stories, other people's stories, our own stories in a fantastic way that we can go home with and talk to our friends about, man, tonight I threw thunder and all of this happened and it was amazing. We grew up with that and it makes us feel good. So if you can step into our skin for a little while we step into your skin and we share experiences, I think we can come away better.
CB, you wanted to add something? You got a show tomorrow.
Yeah, no, and mine is not just to boost my show, but to continue the conversation, just because we're talking today, just because tomorrow we are doing the part 2 of the #BlackAF Roundtable with myself, Gabe, Cypher, Tanya, Honey and Dice, Swordsfall, Michael Kritz. Just because we were having these conversations publicly and loudly, don't let that be the end of the conversation. We're just bringing one conversation of the plethora of Black people that are in this community. B. Dave, Orion, TK, TJ, all have value and all have valuable input when it comes to this. So just continue it. Like I said, that is tomorrow on my channel at time zones. 11 Pacific, 1 Central, 2 Eastern. It is also on the front page of Twitch. So just be there if you can. And if you can't, again, continue the conversation in your own spaces, because that's how change happens.
Orion, final thoughts?
Hey, Christina, sorry. Yes, Christina Ariel, I'm sorry. Don't yell at me, Cypher.
My final thoughts are just that you should celebrate Black people when we are full of joy and peace and happiness, not just when we're suffering, not just when these sort of things pop up where you see violence and you see the side that exists for us all the time. This is the same old stuff that we've lived through all the time. We know about all this stuff. Celebrate us all the time. When we're happy, celebrate those things too, boost those things. It's more important even than the violence when it comes to showing that we are loved for more than just what you can feel better about. Celebrate with us as well.
Yeah, not a news headline. Gabe?
This is more for the people who aren't Black. We will oftentimes not come to you because oftentimes it has been harder for us to feel like we even belong. There will be dozens of times when someone may look up to your content or like the stuff that you do, whether you're a big creator or a small one, but they may not feel like they belong in your space. And if you make them feel welcome, that can change it. But oftentimes, because if you see how much hate even people wanted to do in this stream, because any at all is ridiculous. There are Black creators like us here, and we are some of the bigger Black creators, but don't just come to us. Come to the people that don't get the same attention we do. Like if you have 200 followers on Twitter and if one of those people is a Black person in Tabletop who no one has ever reached out to, I did a consultation with someone. They went through their follower list, which was emotional work, but they went through their follower list, found a significant portion of them were actually Black Tabletop players who, when they reached out, 80% of them had not had anyone reach out to them about playing in games. They had watched shows, but literally 80% of them, no one had talked to them about wanting to join a game. That was all it took. They sat for an hour, went through a follower list, and found people to reach out. And if they say no, it's no. But that doesn't mean it's a no forever. They might just be busy this week. They might be busy this month because people have lives. But if we don't feel like we belong in your space, why would you ever expect us to ask to join?
You, Dave?
Thank you again, all of y'all, for coming here and sharing your stories. Believe it or not, these things are difficult for us to talk about. We might sound all cavalier about it, but believe me when I tell you, it is traumatic as hell. We're just, again, accustomed to it. We shouldn't have to be, but we are. If you would like to support, please do support Black creators and the things we're doing. Again, I myself wrote Dungeons and Dragons: A Darkened Wish. The trade paperback is available now. It's dope. I DM lots of shows. I have a Patreon. If you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, if you want to play Vampire the Masquerade or any of the things you know me for, and probably some games you never heard of, patreon.com/BDaveWalters. Whenever you can, boost people, because that is one of the most powerful things you can do is vote with your wallet, especially during this time that in the midst of this chaos, remember there was an underlying economic chaos of like a global pandemic that we're still dealing with. That's still a thing. And last but certainly not least, remember that it is Pride Month. That struggle goes hand in hand with every other aspect of the civil rights struggle. Don't overlook it. We have a lot of work to do, but this is a start.
Don't forget, Orion, you worked on Lost Odyssey of Theros. Not Lost Odyssey of Theros. I keep on saying that over and over again.
Yeah,
correct?
Go check out Theros. I worked on some of the monsters on there. You'll see a bunch more of my work coming out in the next however many books. So if you go check those out and just take a little picture of my name in the credits, because
which monster did you work on? What is it? Give me one.
Give us a monster.
Don't blank now. Give me one.
Theros is out.
You can't put somebody. Right, you can't put somebody on blast like
Anvil
that.
Raptor.
You did the Raptor?
Oh
man!
Hey.
The big Cerberus, not the little.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the bit that
those are the good ones.
Or...
Okay.
There are like 2 or 3 others. I think
got some good tier 2 bosses there. Okay.
Dave's in the chat, boosting everything.
The dopest part is the epic monsters. I helped work on the mechanics for that.
Yeah, that's a whole new system. That's like
toe in the water.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, did you do Phylaskia?
Did I? Probably. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. I forget. Okay, the thing is the work cycle. Okay, this was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
All the stuff I'm doing now is going to come out like in a year and a half. It's just like, but yeah, I did those as well. There's a lot of cool stuff. It was fun. The work that was like a tiny bit of work in comparison to what I've done in the next couple of products. So be juiced.
Yeah. And TJ, are we good to wrap up? You already spoke about projects you're doing?
I'm just happy that we were all here and we all got to talk and share our experiences. Thank you guys for listening and being part of the conversation. Just by listening, you are a part of this, and you spent the time and the energy to listen, and that makes a difference. Thank you for being here as well.
Yeah. Thank all of you for being on the show and sharing your experiences. And I know you're getting asked to be on a lot of shows right now, asked to continue past this, not this week.
Like, can keep it up.
You has to keep going.
Ask more.
You are all wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show. I think that about wraps it up. We love you.